This stuff is dangerous.
It is so hot today. I'm in South Texas, it's early September, it's 102 degrees outside, and I'm gonna fucking die. That's it. I'm gonna melt into a puddle, I'm gonna consolidate into a lesser form of, amorphous flesh and evaporate. My own death via evaporation aside, I'm in that creative lull again, where my work life is taking precedence over my creative outlet that is YouTube. So I'm taking the lazy approach today as I slowly amass more clips for my next higher production value piece, so don't go running to that comment section with your fucking keyboard sword and tear me a new asshole for making a video that is slightly different than the things I normally make. I said stop! Put the fucking fingerless driver gloves away! It has a fucking cable! For those of you unaware, I'm a geologist. Actually, I'm a geophysicist, but since most people don't know what that is, I'll just say geologist. Basically a fancier, different version of a geologist. Geologist, that's it. Yes, I study rocks for a living, more specifically earthquakes and hydrogeology, but I won't let jargon fry the minds of the youngins here just yet. About a year ago, I was asked to help teach a geologic field methods course for the university that I was employed at during the summer. Field methods is just a class where we take students out to various locations and have them make geologic maps of the area that we give them. It usually involves looking at the ground for hours on end, scribbling some lines on paper, getting lost, and ultimately banging your head against a rock and, subsequently crying until the assignment is due, and I was going to be one of two teaching assistants alongside an instructor that was going to teach the course to a group of about 30 students. Now, this wasn't some conventional classroom course. We lived outdoors camping for 6 weeks straight in the wilderness of Utah and Montana. Some campsites were nice. They had water and some even had electricity. Others were so remote that you had to drive 80 miles to even get a cell phone signal or see another human face or even have running water. But as an outdoorsy guy myself, it was a blast. Utah near Moab and Arches National Park is fucking gorgeous. I got to map just on the other side of the park. Here's a picture of that. Montana is beautiful, high mountains, big sky country. I even got to see Yellowstone and Old Faithful. I even got to see some horses that were just there. It was fucking cool. But not all was so hunky-dory. This being a 100% outdoor camping field course, we were at the mercy of whatever Mother Nature decided to throw at us. Whether snakes, ticks, mud, ticks, snakes, freezing temperatures, snakes, extreme heat, snakes, ticks, and did I mention fucking ticks? All of those fun things aside, let me tell you about how all of our bad luck with this field course was condensed into a short 4-day period out of the entire 6 weeks. Generally, how a day would go is that we would round up the students, drive out to the field site that we were currently mapping, and we would just let them loose to do their work. This typically involved hiking around a 7-mile by 7-mile square about 2 or 3 times a day over the course of about 4 to 5 days per assignment. So every day, you're out there hiking 10 to 15 miles, and us instructors had to keep tabs on all of the students, so we were moving around way more just to check up on everyone else. I had never eaten more food in my life, and I still managed to lose weight by the end of it. For safety, we would put the students into pairs or in groups of 3 if there was an odd man out due to illness or injury. We also gave them handheld little GPS trackers and a high-range handheld radio, or walkie-talkie, whatever you want to call it, so that we could check in with everyone at least twice a day across the entire working area just to make sure that, everyone was okay. That's how things normally went down. And about 3 weeks into the course, we finally made our way from Utah into southern Montana in early June. Now, for those unaware, early Montana in June might as well be wintertime for a South Texan. It was bone-chilling cold at night, like 30 degrees Fahrenheit or around -1 degree centigrade. Yes, that's cold to me, someone who's lived in South Texas in his entire life. But we made our way to our first field site in the state near a rinky-dink town called Dillon. Now, Montana is mostly wide-open, treeless landscape if you aren't up in the mountains, and that's what this particular field site was. Wide open, not a tree in sight for miles around, and a lot of hills and very rocky terrain. And due to overgrazing in the area by cattle, all of the grass has been replaced by cactus. So if you don't have good boots on, you were in for a fun time. Either way, to even get out to this field site, you had to drive on about 10 miles of dirty farm road, which were only maintained when they were accessible. This means that if there was enough rain or snow, the roads didn't get any treatment, and they were just reclaimed by Mother Nature. So up until that point, there hadn't really been any inclement weather that was deterring us until about 2 days after our arrival in Montana. that's when the rain started. This turned the otherwise drivable surfaces of the dirt roads into absolute slurry. The roads were liquefied, but we trekked on. We packed up our gear and set out down these roads, quote unquote, and we took off in our 4 Suburbans and 1 Ford F-150 to this next field site. Sure, yeah, everything up until then had been fine, but about 2 miles in down this molten road, that's when things started to go south. The ruts that were formed by the tires that normally go through that road had gotten about twice as deep from all of the runoff water in the previous rainfall. This means that your tires are digging deeper and deeper into the ground, so where the sides of the tires are being hit by whatever is in the ground. Fun fact, by the way, the rubber on the sides of a tire, the sidewall, is way thinner than the actual tread, so it's way more susceptible to a puncture. So guess what? We got a flat tire on the muddy road. Sure, yeah, 1 flat tire, fine, no big deal. Thankfully, we had a whole bunch of, rearing young guys ready to get out and change that tire to show off to the ladies. That sucker was swapped out for the spare in about 30 seconds, but down the road we went, and mind you, we only had 1 spare tire for each vehicle, and the spare for the truck was incompatible for all of the other Suburbans. Then we got the second flat tire. The same vehicle, mind you. The same vehicle got 2 flat tires within the span of about 10 minutes. Up until this point, the mud had gotten a little bit deeper, a little bit thicker, stickier, the kind that clings to the bottom of your shoes when it dries out, and there's so much caked on there that when you put the boots back on later without cleaning them off, you've grown 6 inches taller. The boys fly out again, change the tire in about 2 minutes this time, and away we go. Sure, great. And then someone had to jinx us. Over the radio, I hear a student say, "Well, at least we won't get another flat tire." And not 1 second after the word tire passed her lips, they blew a tire on their car. So now we're down 3 spares with 5 vehicles on the road and only 2/3 of the way there. We have 2 spares left, 1 for 4 Suburbans and 1 for the truck. We're fucked if we get another flat tire, because that means no more tires. If we got 2 more flats out there, we'd have to abandon a car. All of these tires were getting punctured by rocks in the sidewall of the rubber because the ruts were so deep that all the rocks in the mud were just stabbing the tires. And they were all brand new, and they were getting chewed by this muddy road. So we cautiously swim through the mud the rest of the way there. Yes, swim through the mud, because by this time, on the way to the field site, the mud was so deep that even the massive beast of a truck that I was driving was sliding off the road as if it were a river pushing a canoe. So miraculously, we make it to the field site with no more flat tires, thank Christ. But we still have the added problem of getting back down the same roads to the campsite at the end of the day, with no alternate route out there. So I'm tasked with taking the big motherfucking truck all the way back into town with the flats to get them changed out for new ones, and then come all the way back. The only problem is that in order to drive to the field sites, we had to throw all of the vehicles into lower gear so that we could drive through the mud. That means the big ass truck I'm driving with low mileage is just chewing on gas like a fat girl on a french fry. That truck was 3/4 of the way full on gas before we left, and now it was 1/16 of a tank away from empty. The only words of encouragement I got before I set out on my drive back: don't use low gear. Excuse me? How was I supposed to make it back if I don't use low gear? Fuck it. So I set out down the ocean of mud, sliding back and forth all the way there. The needle is on E the whole time, and when I make it back to the highway, and the nearest gas station was 10 miles down the road. So I barely make it to the gas station, but how, might you ask, if I was on E? I punched it, accelerating to 80 miles an hour just before my gas ran out, threw that shit in neutral, and just coasted into the fucking gas station. I Hail Married a fucking truck into a gas station! And it worked! At any time, I could have run out of gas on that dirt road, been stranded miles from anyone in either direction, and I would have had to have just left the truck and trekked out on foot in shin-deep mud until I found help. That's it. Absolute hell. Fuck it. But I made it. It was fine. But that wasn't the end of it. No, that was not the end of the chaos that these 4 days were dishing out to us. So by the 4th day, that's when the weather really started to rear its ugly head. The daily weather pattern was like this. You'd wake up, it'd be nice and sunny outside, and the day would be crystal clear, not a problem, and then at about 3 in the afternoon, it just started raining out of the blue. We would get storms, and it was hell. But thankfully, we were all pretty much done at the end of the day by that point in time, so we would just pack it up and leave before the storms actually hit. But on this day, this particular day, our last day there, we failed to do that. So, we're out in this wide open field site, all of the students scattered around, and this time it was like a 5 mile by 7 mile mapping area. Big, open, clear blue sky with some nice wispy clouds. Beautiful day at around noon. And then at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I see some clouds way off in the distance. And they catch my eye because the contrast between the blue of the sky and the pitch black of these clouds was just getting closer and closer and closer. At one point, the mountains that they were behind were no longer visible because this black sheet was rolling towards us and just covered the mountain. You could see lightning, we could hear thunder, but it was still about like 20 miles out, but it was coming in quick. So we warned the students over these radios that we had to shelter in place as best they could because it was coming fast and we couldn't all make a mad dash for the cars safely before the storm hit, so we were just gonna take it up the ass. Mind you, there's nothing for cover. There's no rocks to hide under, no trees, which isn't a good idea if you're to stand under a tree in a nasty storm anyway because, you know, lightning. Nothing. So we just had to get low and wait for this shit to pass. I was on the far north side of this field site at a rather high vantage point, so I could see this black wall slowly moving towards us and consuming the southern end of the field site with all the students in it, mind you. Some of us were up in the north, but most of us were in the south. Then in this nice quiet calm before the storm, the wind was picking up, the rain was starting to fall. It was just eerily quiet. And then I hear this small crackling over the radio, inaudible at first, and then it kind of faded out, went away, and then we heard the loudest scream of terror imaginable. And it was as if though God ripped open the heavens and just dumped everything down. It was hailing, it was pouring rain, there was thunder and lightning everywhere. The wind was beating the rain and hail into us from every single direction. If you've ever been paintballing, take that times 100 because those hailstones are beating you from all sides. For an agonizing 10 minutes, this storm just took the biggest shit on us. We got wailed on. People had welts, they were fucking bruised. One guy almost got fucking struck by lightning. Some people got knocked down into the mud by the wind. It was fucking chaos. Miraculously, the cars were fine. No broken windshields, which was insane to me because I got back and I was basically beaten black and blue. And then we called it a day. We said, you know what, we just went home. That was it. We'd had enough for the day, so we laced up our fucking boots and just went back to camp. And that was it. That was it. That was the camp. It might as well have been a tornado touchdown site. When we actually got back to our campsite, there was shit everywhere. Tents were flying around, food and ovens that were left out were ruined, shit was everywhere, trash was flying around, people were crying, it was fucking agony. And then the rest of the time, the weather was fine. The last 3 weeks of our time in Montana were nice and pleasant, except for one instance where I fell off my sleeping mat in the middle of the night and almost froze to death. That camp was wild. I don't know, that's just the most memorable thing I have in my brain from doing that field camp. It was a hell of an experience. I loved doing it. I would do it again in a heartbeat because I love teaching. It was a lot of fun. I like teaching students what I know to help them in their future careers. It's great. That's about it. I don't really know what else. I don't know. Is the Storytime thing legit anymore, or is it like, hey, this guy's stealing stars videos. He's not doing what I am precious. The precious star videos are being shared. Yes, Master Brian, this is the precious star videos. Yes. Am I allowed to do that? I don't know. I'm doing it anyway. So fuck it. Here you go. That's it.
I swear I'm not a bitter person, but all these little things can sometimes leave you cursing. It's enough to make you clench your hands tight when you're on an escalator, walk left, stand right. How much smoother our lives would be appearing if we could reduce all these minor irritants. So if you're with me, join hands in the fight against those who refuse to walk left, stand right.
I'm getting angry now, I can see it.